The alarm that interrupted the tense confrontation in the conference room brought news that changed everything. Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the sensor station burst into the room with a look of panic on her face. "Commander, we have a massive spatial anomaly forming between our position and the Catherian fleet," she reported breathlessly. "It's growing rapidly and generating gravitational distortions that are pulling both Aurora Base and the Catherian ships toward it." Commander Stone immediately moved to the room's communication panel. "All hands, this is the commander. We have a spatial emergency. All departments report readiness status immediately." General Korvax looked at his own handheld device, which was flashing with urgent messages from his fleet. "This is impossible. Our ships are built to withstand any natural phenomenon." Jake looked at Zara and saw recognition dawning in her purple eyes. "Zara, do you know what's happening?" "I think so," she said, her voice tight with worry. "When my dimensional drive malfunctioned, it created instabilities in local spacetime. The energy signatures from your human technology interfacing with Catherian systems may have triggered a cascade reaction." The room shook as Aurora Base was pulled closer to the growing anomaly. Through the conference room's viewport, they could see space itself bending and twisting like water going down drain. Several of the smaller Catherian ships were already struggling against the gravitational pull. Dr. Hayes' voice came over the intercom. "Commander, we're reading massive gravitational stress on the station's hull. We have maybe 30 minutes before structural failure." General Korvax was receiving similar reports from his fleet. "Our largest ships can resist the pull longer, but the smaller vessels will be lost within the hour. And if this anomaly continues to grow, it will eventually consume everything in this sector." Jake felt his mind racing through the technical details Zara had taught him about dimensional physics. "Zara, is there a way to collapse the anomaly?" "Theoretically, yes," she said, moving to one of the room's computer terminals. "But it will require precise coordination between human and Catherian technology. The resonance frequencies would have to be exactly synchronized, and the power output would need to be distributed across multiple vessels." Colonel Vex stepped forward. "Even if such a plan were possible, our systems are not compatible with human technology. The interfaces are completely different." Zara looked up from the terminal with a slight smile. "Actually, they are compatible now. I've spent the past week creating hybrid interfaces that can bridge human and Catherian systems. I was working on ways to repair my dimensional drive using human components, but the same principles could be applied to this problem." Commander Stone moved to look over Zara's shoulder at the calculations appearing on the screen. "Princess, are you saying you can coordinate our ships with the Catherian fleet to stop this anomaly?" "I can, but it will require complete cooperation between both fleets," Zara said. "Every ship will need to adjust their power output continuously based on real-time calculations. If even one vessel is out of sync, the entire process could fail." "General," Korvax had been listening to the exchange with growing amazement. "You would do this, even after how my people have treated you." Zara looked at him steadily. "General, there are thousands of lives at stake on both sides. This is not about politics or prejudice. This is about doing what's right." Jake felt pride swell in his chest as he watched Zara take charge of the situation. This was exactly what he had been trying to show General Korvax, that Zara's unique perspective and adaptive thinking made her invaluable in a crisis. The next 20 minutes were the most intense of Jake's life. Zara worked with both human and Catherian engineers to implement her solution, coordinating multiple teams across dozens of ships while the spatial anomaly continued to grow. Jake assisted her by managing the human side of the communications, translating her technical instructions into language that Aurora Base's crew could understand and implement quickly. "All vessels, this is Princess Zara," she announced over the combined human-Catherian communication channel. "We will begin the synchronized pulse sequence in 60 seconds. Remember, timing is critical. Watch your screens for the frequency adjustments and do not deviate from the pattern." Jake watched. the main display as dozens of ships from both fleets aligned themselves around the anomaly. Human vessels with their angular designs and bright lights formed one part of the formation, while the sleek Cytherian ships with their organic curves took positions on the opposite side. "Begin sequence," Zara commanded. Energy beams lanced out from every ship simultaneously, converging on the center of the spatial anomaly. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the twisted space began to stabilize. The gravitational distortions, weakening as the coordinated energy pulses disrupted the cascade reaction that had been feeding the anomaly's growth. "It's working," Lieutenant Kim reported from her sensor. "Station, the anomaly is shrinking." But the process was far from over. For the next 10 minutes, Zara continued to coordinate the complex dance of energy and timing that was required to safely collapse the anomaly. Jake watched her work with the same focus and determination he had seen when she first repaired her artificial leg in his quarters. But now her efforts were saving thousands of lives. When the last traces of the spatial distortion finally disappeared, the combined cheers from both human and Cytherian ships could be heard over the communication channels. Zara slumped back in her chair, exhausted but smiling. General Korvax stood in stunned silence for several moments before speaking. "Princess Zara, your actions today have saved both fleets. The tactical coordination you demonstrated was flawless." "Thank you, General," Zara said. "But I could not have done it without the cooperation of both sides. This success belongs to everyone who was willing to work together." Major Rith, who had been silent throughout the crisis, finally spoke up. "Princess, I must ask, how did you learn to interface human and Cytherian systems? Such knowledge requires years of study." "I learned it in 1 week," Zara said simply. "Jake Miller taught me to see problems from new angles, and the human engineers showed me techniques that Cytherian education never covered. When you combine different approaches to the same problem, you often find solutions that neither side could discover alone." Jake saw something change in General Korvax's expression. The rigid certainty that had defined his earlier attitude was gone, replaced by something that looked like thoughtful consideration. "Princess," Korvax said slowly, "perhaps I have been too hasty in my judgments about both you and these humans." Commander Stone stepped forward. "General, I'd like to propose something. What if we establish a joint research station where humans and Cytherians could work together on projects like this? Princess Zara has shown that our species have much to offer each other." "And what of the princess herself?" Korvax asked. "She has clearly found something among humans that our society failed to provide." Zara stood up and moved to Jake's side, taking his hand openly. "General Korvax, I request permission to remain with the humans permanently. I have found not only useful work here, but also love and acceptance. Jake Miller has asked me to marry him, and I have accepted." The silence in the room was deafening. Jake felt his heart pounding as he waited for Korvax's response. Finally, the general spoke. "Princess Zara, your actions today have proven that strength comes in many forms. Perhaps it is time for the Celestial Empire to learn new ways of thinking about what makes someone valuable." He turned to Commander Stone. "Commander, I accept your proposal for a joint research station. And Princess, you have my blessing to follow your heart, wherever it may lead." 6 months later, Jake and Zara stood together on the observation deck of New Horizon Station, the first joint human-Cytherian research facility. Around them, engineers and scientists from both species worked side by side on projects that neither could have imagined alone. Their wedding had been attended by representatives from dozens of worlds, becoming a symbol of cooperation and understanding between different species. But for Jake and Zara, the most important moment had been their private vows to each other, to always see strength in difference, to find solutions where others saw only problems, and to prove every day that love could overcome any obstacle. As they watched ships from the human Colonial Defense Force and the reformed Celestial Empire working together on patrol missions, Zara leaned against Jake's shoulder. "Do you think we really changed everything?" she asked. Jake smiled and kissed the top of her silver hair. We changed what mattered most. We showed that being different isn't something to hide or fix. It's something to celebrate and build on. In the distance, new ships were arriving at the station every day, bringing young people from both species who wanted to learn from each other and create a better future together. Jake and Zara had started something that would outlast them both. A new way of thinking that valued every individual's unique contributions to the greater good. Jake's plan was simple in concept, but dangerous in execution. He wanted to invite General Corvex and a small delegation to Aurora Base to see firsthand how human society functioned. The goal was to demonstrate that Zara's contributions were valued, not despite her disability, but because her unique perspective led to innovations that others couldn't achieve. Commander Stone agreed to the plan, but with conditions. If this goes wrong, Jake, we could all end up dead or prisoners, he said. But if it works, it could change how both our species interact forever. The invitation was sent to the Catherian fleet, and after several hours of silence, General Corvex agreed to come aboard with 2 other officers. Stone insisted that the meeting take place in Aurora Base's main conference room, where the station's senior staff could witness everything that happened. While they waited for the Catherian delegation to arrive, Jake worked with Zara to prepare a presentation that would showcase not just her individual achievements, but the broader human philosophy of turning challenges into strengths. They gathered data on every crew member who had overcome significant obstacles to contribute to the station's mission. Look at this, Jake said, showing Zara personnel files on his tablet. Lisa Carter lost her hearing in a transport accident, but she's our best communications officer because she learned to read micro-expressions in body language better than anyone else. Dr. Hayes has a heart condition that prevents him from serving on ships, but his focus on preventive medicine has kept our crew healthier than any other deep space station. Zara studied the files with fascination. Your people turn what others would see as weaknesses into specialized strengths. This is completely opposite to how the Celestial Empire thinks. That's exactly what we need to show General Corvex, Jake said. Human society succeeds because we don't waste talent based on arbitrary physical standards. When the Catherian shuttle docked with Aurora Base, Jake felt his nervousness spike. General Corvex was even more intimidating in person, standing nearly 7 feet tall with perfectly symmetrical features and movements that spoke of lifelong military training. The 2 officers with him, Colonel Vex and Major Rith, looked at the human crew with barely concealed disgust. Commander Stone welcomed the delegation with formal courtesy. General Corvex, welcome to Aurora Base. I hope this meeting will help our species understand each other better. Commander Stone, I am here only to retrieve our princess and address the corruption she has experienced. Corvex replied coldly. Nothing more. Stone led the group to the conference room, where Jake and Zara were waiting along with the senior staff. When Corvex saw Zara sitting beside Jake at the conference table, his expression darkened further. Princess, you will stand. And move away from that human immediately, Corvex commanded. Zara remained seated. General, I am here as a guest of Aurora Base, and I will conduct myself according to human customs while I am among humans. Jake stood up and faced Corvex directly. General, before you make any decisions about Princess Zara, I'd like to show you what she has accomplished during her time here. I have no interest in the primitive accomplishments of humans, Corvex said dismissively. Then let me show you what Zara has accomplished, Jake said firmly. Over the next hour, Jake and Zara presented their work on Aurora Base's systems. They showed how Zara's modifications had increased power efficiency, improved life support reliability, and enhanced communication range. More importantly, they explained how her unique perspective, shaped by her experience with adaptive technology, had led to solutions that no one else had considered. The traditional Catherian approach would have been to replace these systems entirely, Zara explained to Corvex. But Jake taught me to look for ways to improve what already exists. The result is better performance at a fraction of the cost. Colonel Vex leaned forward. These are clever tricks, but they do not change the fact that you are genetically inferior. Jake felt his anger rise, but he kept his voice calm. Colonel, with respect, you're measuring the wrong thing. You're focused on whether Zara matches some ideal physical standard, but you're ignoring what actually matters: results. Major Risk spoke for the first time. Results matter less than maintaining the purity of our bloodlines. The princess should not reproduce because her defects would weaken future generations. That's where you're completely wrong, Jake said, his voice getting stronger. Diversity makes species stronger, not weaker. Look at human history. Our greatest advances came from people who thought differently, who saw problems from new angles, because they had different experiences. Jake activated a holographic display that showed a timeline of human technological development. Every major breakthrough we've made came from someone who didn't fit the normal pattern. People who were considered disabled, outsiders, or failures by the standards of their time. He highlighted specific examples: scientists who made discoveries because their physical limitations forced them to develop new research methods. Engineers who created revolutionary designs because they had to work around their own disabilities. Leaders who changed society because they understood what it meant to be excluded. Zara isn't broken or defective, Jake continued, his voice now carrying the passion of someone defending everything he believed in. She's exactly what both our species need. Someone who can see solutions that the rest of us miss because we're all thinking the same way. General Corvex listened to the presentation with growing irritation. You speak of diversity and inclusion, but what happens when your society becomes weak because you accept inferior individuals? What happens when you face a real threat that requires physical strength and genetic perfection? Commander Stone stepped forward. General, let me answer that with a question of my own. How long has the Celestial Empire existed? Over 3,000 years, Corvex said proudly. And in those 3,000 years, how much has your technology advanced? How many new worlds have you colonized? How many problems have you solved that your ancestors couldn't solve? Corvex's silence was telling. Stone continued. Humans have been in space for less than 200 years. In that time, we've spread across dozens of star systems, developed faster than light travel, created artificial intelligence, and built societies that work for everyone. We did it not by seeking perfection, but by embracing the strengths that come from diversity. Zara stood up beside Jake. General Corvex, I have learned more about engineering and innovation in 1 week among humans than in 25 years. In the Celestial Empire. Not because humans are smarter than us, but because they create environments where intelligence can flourish regardless of physical form. You have been corrupted, Corvex said angrily. You speak like them now with their weak philosophies and their acceptance of mediocrity. Jake had heard enough. General, you call us weak, but which one of us is really stronger? Zara, who has overcome obstacles her entire life and still managed to become brilliant. Or you, who has never had to struggle for anything and can't imagine how anyone different from you could have value. The room fell silent. Jake knew he had crossed a line by speaking so directly to the general, but he didn't care. He was fighting for Zara's future and for something even bigger, the chance to show that love and acceptance could triumph over prejudice and fear. Corvex's hand moved to his weapon. Human, you dare to insult a general of the Celestial Empire? I dare to speak the truth, Jake said, not backing down. And the truth is that Zara is worth more than your entire fleet of perfect warriors. Because she has something they'll never have, the ability to make life better for everyone around her. At that moment, the station's alarms began to sound. Something was happening in space around Aurora Base. Something that would test everything Jake had just said about human resilience and the power of working together. 3 days after Zara's arrival, Jake was working in the main engineering bay when Commander Alex Stone walked up behind him. The commander was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had been running Aurora Base for 5 years, and earned the respect of every crew member through his fair leadership and quick thinking. Miller, Commander Stone said, I need to talk to you in my office. Jake felt his stomach drop. He followed the commander through the corridors of the station, trying to think of explanations for anything Stone might have discovered. When they reached the commander's office, Stone closed the door and activated the privacy screen. Jake, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer, Stone said, sitting behind his desk. Is there an alien on my station? Jake opened his mouth to deny it, but something in Stone's expression told him that lying would be pointless. Yes, sir. How long? 3 days, sir. Stone nodded slowly. Dr. Hayes has been tracking unusual biosignatures, and our sensors have detected energy readings that don't match any human technology. I was hoping you would tell me yourself, but I understand why you might be cautious. Sir, she's not dangerous, Jake said quickly. She's injured and needs help. She never meant to come here. She? Stone raised an eyebrow. Tell me everything. Jake explained about Zara's arrival, her damaged dimensional drive, and her situation with her own people. He described how they had been working together to repair her equipment and improve the station's systems. When he finished, Stone was quiet for several minutes. Bring her to me, Stone said finally. If she's going to be on my station, I need to meet her officially. An hour later, Jake returned to his quarters with a security escort. He found Zara working on her dimensional drive, which was now partially reassembled with human components integrated into its alien design. Zara, this is Commander Stone, Jake said. He's the leader of this station. Zara stood up carefully, her repaired artificial leg humming softly. She looked at Stone with dignity, despite her nervousness. Commander Stone, I am Princess Zara of the Celestial Empire. I apologize for arriving on your station without permission. It was not intentional. Stone studied her with the same careful attention he gave to every important decision. Your Highness, Jake tells me you've been helping to improve our systems. While you've been here, I have tried to be useful, Zara said. Jake Miller has shown me great kindness, and I wanted to repay that kindness by contributing what I could. Show me, Stone said. For the next 2 hours, Zara demonstrated the modifications she had suggested for the station's power systems, life support, and communications array. Stone's engineering officers confirmed that her improvements would increase efficiency across the board and solve several chronic problems they had been struggling with for months. Impressive, Stone said. Jake, I want you and the princess to continue this work, but from now on, you report to me daily. And Princess, I'm granting you temporary asylum on Aurora Base until we can establish proper diplomatic contact with your people. That same day, long-range sensors detected a fleet of ships approaching Aurora Base. The ships were unlike anything in human databases, with sleek designs and energy signatures that matched Zara's dimensional drive. When they were close enough to communicate, they transmitted a message demanding the return of their lost princess. Stone called Jake and Zara to the command center, where they watched as a stern-looking alien appeared on the main screen. He had the same pale blue skin as Zara, but his features were harder and his eyes were cold. I am General Corvex of the Celestial Empire, the alien said. We have come to retrieve our princess and punish those who have corrupted her with their inferior ways. Zara stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. General Corvex, I am not corrupted. I am safe and well treated among these humans. Princes. Zara, you have disgraced yourself by associating with these primitive beings, Corvex replied. Your family is ashamed of your behavior. You will return to the fleet immediately. What if I refuse? Zara asked. Corvex's expression became even colder. Then we will take you by force and destroy this station to prevent further contamination of our people. Stone stepped up beside Zara. General, Princess Zara is under the protection of Aurora Base and the Human Colonial Defense Force. Any hostile action against this station will be considered an act of war. You would risk conflict Over a defective princess? Corvex asked with disgust. Jake felt anger surge through him at the general's words. He moved to Zara's other side. She's not defective. She's brilliant and kind and worth 100 of you. Corvex looked at Jake with contempt. Ah, the crippled human who has corrupted our princess. You dare to speak to a general of the Celestial Empire? I dare to speak the truth, Jake said firmly. Zara has accomplished more in 3 days here than your entire empire has probably accomplished in years. She's solved problems that stumped our best engineers, and she's done it while being treated with the respect she deserves. Zara reached out and took Jake's hand, not caring that the gesture was being broadcast to the Catherian fleet. Jake Miller speaks truly. In 3 days among humans, I have felt more valued and useful than in 25 years among my own people. The transmission ended abruptly, but sensors showed that the Catherian fleet was taking defensive positions around Aurora Base. Stone immediately sent a message to the Colonial Defense Force requesting backup, but the nearest human ships were days away. That evening, Jake and Zara sat in his quarters, both aware that their time together might be ending soon. The dimensional drive was nearly repaired, but neither of them wanted to talk about what that meant. I have something to tell you, Zara said softly. Among my people, it is forbidden for someone with my condition to form romantic attachments. They believe that our genetic flaws should not be passed to future generations. Jake felt his heart racing. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I am saying that I have developed feelings for you that my people will consider shameful, Zara said, her purple eyes meeting his. But I do not feel shame. I feel happiness for the first time in my life. Jake reached out and touched her face. Gently. I love you too, Zara. I've been trying not to admit it, because I know how complicated everything is. But I can't help how I feel. Zara leaned into his touch. If I return to my people, I will be married to someone chosen by my family, someone who will treat me as a burden to be endured. I will spend my life pretending to be grateful for scraps of respect. Then don't go back, Jake said. Stay here with me. We can build a life together, and you can use your talents to help both our peoples. But if I stay, your station might be destroyed, Zara said. I cannot ask you to risk so many lives for my happiness. Jake was quiet for a moment, then smiled. You know what the difference is between humans and your people. What? When we see a problem that seems impossible to solve, we don't give up. We find a third option that nobody else thought of. The next morning, Jake had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. He presented it to Commander Stone, who listened carefully and then smiled for the first time since the crisis. Began. Jake, that's either the most diplomatic solution I've ever heard, or it's going to get us all killed, Stone said. But I think it's worth trying. Zara looked between them with curiosity. What are you planning? We're going to challenge everything. Your people believe about strength and weakness, Jake said. And we're going to do it in a way that even General Corvex can't ignore. The next morning, Jake woke up to find Zara sitting at his workbench, carefully examining the dimensional drive device that had brought her to Aurora Base. She had been awake for hours, studying the strange crystal and metal contraption with the focus of someone who understood technology far better than most people Jake knew. Good morning, Jake said, rubbing his eyes. He had slept on the floor to give Zara the bed, and his back was sore from the hard surface. Zara looked up from the device and smiled. Good morning, Jake Miller. I have been studying this drive, and I think I understand what went wrong. But fixing it will be very difficult with the tools available here. Jake walked over to look at the device. Up close, it was even more complex than he had first thought. The crystal seemed to pulse with its own inner light, and the metal components were made from materials he had never seen before. What does it do exactly? It creates small tears in space-time, Zara explained, her translation device making. Her words clear to Jake. My people use them to travel great distances instantly. But this one was damaged in a battle, and when I tried to use it to escape from my guards, It brought me here instead of to the neutral planet where I was supposed to be going. Guards? Jake asked. Were you a prisoner? Zara's expression decayed. Bitter. Not exactly. I was being sent away on what my family called a diplomatic mission, but really they just wanted me far from the royal court. My presence embarrasses them because of my condition. She gestured to her artificial leg. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. That's wrong. You're clearly brilliant. Anyone can see that just by watching you work. You are the first person outside. My servants to ever say that, Zara said softly. In the Celestial Empire, physical perfection is everything. If you cannot fight like a warrior or dance like a courtier, you are considered worthless. I have tried to prove my value through my knowledge of science and engineering, but my family sees these as inferior pursuits. Jake shook his head. That's their loss. Here, let me show you something. He pulled out a tablet and showed Zara some of the maintenance reports he had written over the past year. See these improvements to the station's life support system? And this modification that increased our power efficiency by 15%. Those came from thinking about problems differently, because I have to approach things from a different angle than other people. Zara studied the reports with growing amazement. These solutions are very clever. You found ways to improve systems that were already working well. How did your people react to these innovations? They promoted me to senior technician and gave me a bonus, Jake said with pride. Because results matter more than how you look or how you walk. For the rest of the morning, Jake showed Zara around his room, explaining his various inventions and modifications. She was fascinated by his adaptive tools and the way he had reorganized everything to work better with his prosthetic leg. In return, she began to explain some of the principles behind Catherian technology. Your people's approach to engineering is very different from ours, Zara observed. We focus on creating perfect systems that work exactly as designed. But you humans seem to excel at making things work better than they were originally supposed to. We call it improvisation, Jake said. When something doesn't work the way it should, we find another way to make it work. Around noon, there was a knock on Jake's door. He quickly motioned for Zara to hide in the small closet, then opened the door to find his friend Lisa Carter standing outside. Lisa was the station's communications officer, and one of the few people Jake trusted completely. Hey, Jake, Lisa said, walking into his room. You missed breakfast again. I brought you some food. She set down a tray with sandwiches and coffee. Thanks, Lisa. I was working late last night and overslept. Lisa looked around the room and noticed that Jake's bed looked like it had been slept in, even though Jake was clearly wearing the same clothes from yesterday. She also noticed some unfamiliar tools on his workbench and a strange smell in the air, like ozone after a thunderstorm. Jake, is everything okay? You've been acting strange for the past few days, and now your room smells weird. Jake tried to act casual. I've just been working on some new projects. You know how I get when I'm focused on something. Lisa studied his face carefully. She had known Jake for 3 years, and she could tell when he was hiding something. But she also trusted him enough to know he wouldn't do anything dangerous without good reason. Well, if you need help with anything, you know you can ask me, right? She said finally. After Lisa left, Zara emerged from the closet. She suspects something, she said. Lisa is smart, but she's also loyal, Jake replied. If I need to tell her about you, I will. But for now, it's safer if fewer people know. They spent the afternoon working together on Aurora Base's maintenance problems. Jake was amazed by how quickly Zara understood the station's systems and how she could suggest improvements that he never would have thought of. Her knowledge of quantum mechanics and advanced materials science was far beyond anything humans had developed. Look at this power distribution problem, Zara said, pointing to a schematic on Jake's computer. Your engineers are trying to solve it by adding more conduits, but that will create inefficiency. Instead, if you modify the frequency of the power flow here and here, you can increase capacity by 20% with no additional hardware. Jake stared at the calculations Zara had written out. This is brilliant. How did you see that so quickly? I have been studying energy systems since I was very young, Zara said. My tutors thought it was a waste of time for a princess, but mathematics and physics were the only subjects where my physical limitations did not matter. That evening, Dr. Ben Hayes stopped by Jake's room. Ben was the station's chief medical officer and another of Jake's close friends. He was carrying a medical scanner and looked concerned. Jake, I've been getting some strange readings on the station's biomonitors, Ben said. There's an unusual energy signature coming from this section, and I wanted to make sure you're not working with any dangerous materials. Jake felt his heart racing. What kind of energy signature? I'm not sure. It's unlike anything I've seen before. Mind if I take a quick scan of your room? Jake knew he couldn't refuse without raising even more suspicions. Sure, go ahead. Ben ran his scanner around the room, and it started beeping rapidly when he pointed it toward the closet where Zara was hiding again. Jake, there's definitely something unusual in here. The readings are off the charts. Before Jake could respond, there was a loud crash from somewhere else on the station, followed by an alarm. Ben's communicator crackled to life. Medical emergency in Section C, Dr. Hayes. Please respond immediately. I have to go, Ben said, hurrying toward the door. But Jake, we need to talk about this later. Whatever you're working on, be careful. After Ben left, Zara came out of the closet looking worried. Your friend's scanner can detect my biosignature. Soon others will notice as well. We'll figure something out, Jake said. But first, let me ask you something. If you could choose, would you want to go back to your people? Or would you rather stay here? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Yesterday, I would have said I had no choice but to return home, even though I am not wanted there. But today, after seeing how your people value intelligence and innovation over physical perfection, I find myself wondering what it would be like to belong somewhere I could actually contribute. Jake felt his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. You could contribute here. We could work together on projects that would help everyone on the station. And when we get to a human colony world, you could help us develop new technologies. But I am an alien, Zara said. Would your people really accept me? Jake thought about Lisa and Ben, both of whom had been suspicious but not hostile. He thought about Commander Stone, who valued results over appearances, and about the other crew members who had learned to respect Jake despite his prosthetic leg. It might take time, Jake said honestly. But humans are good at adapting to new situations. And once they see how brilliant you are, they'll want you to stay. Zara smiled, and Jake realized he was falling for an alien princess who had accidentally dropped into his life. More importantly, he was beginning to hope she might be falling for him too. Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked under the dim lights of his small room on Aurora Base. The space station floated quietly in the darkness between stars, and most of the crew had gone to sleep hours ago. Jake preferred working late when everything was quiet, and he could focus on fixing the broken equipment that kept the station running. He had been a maintenance technician for 3 years now, ever since the mining accident on Colony 7 took his left leg. The doctors had fitted him with a good prosthetic, but it meant his dreams of being a pilot were over. Instead, he learned to fix things, and he was good at it. Very good. His small room was filled with spare parts, tools, and half-finished projects. That would make life easier for everyone on the station. Jake was adjusting a faulty air recycler when the wall in front of him began to shimmer. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. But the shimmer grew stronger, and then the air itself seemed to crack like broken glass. A bright blue light poured through the crack, and Jake stumbled backward, knocking over his toolbox. The crack widened into a hole in space itself. Through it, Jake could see swirling colors and strange lights that hurt to look at. Then something fell through the hole and crashed onto his floor. The hole snapped shut instantly, leaving Only the normal gray wall behind Jake stared at what had landed in his room. It was a person, but not human. She was tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her hair was long and silver, and her clothes looked like they were made from some kind of metal fabric. But what caught Jake's attention was the fact that she was injured and unconscious. Her left leg was clearly artificial, made of some kind of advanced metal and crystal technology. But it was damaged, with sparks coming from several places and strange fluid leaking from the joints. She also had cuts on her arms and face, and she was breathing in short, painful gasps. Jake's first instinct was to call for help, but something stopped him. If he called security, they would take her away and ask a million questions. She was clearly not human, and that would cause all sorts of problems. Jake had heard rumors about other alien species in this part of space, but Base had never made contact with any of them. Instead, Jake knelt down beside her and checked her pulse. Her skin was warm, and her heart was beating, though faster than a human's. She was alive, but she needed help. Jake carefully moved her to his bed and then examined her injuries. The cuts were not too deep, and he could treat those with his medical kit. But the damaged leg device was beyond anything he had ever seen. As he cleaned her wounds, the alien woman began to wake up. Her eyes opened slowly, and Jake saw they were a deep purple color. She looked around in confusion, then saw Jake leaning over her. She tried to sit up quickly, but winced in pain. "Easy," Jake said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're hurt. I'm trying to help you." She stared at him and said something in a language Jake had never heard before. Her voice was musical, even when she seemed to be in pain. She pointed at herself and said Zara several times, and Jake realized she was telling him her name. "Jake," he said, pointing at himself. "My name is Jake." She nodded and tried to stand up, but her damaged artificial leg wouldn't support her weight. She fell back onto the bed with a cry of frustration. Jake could see tears in her purple eyes, and he recognized the look on her face. It was the same look he had seen in his own mirror after his accident. The look of someone whose body had let them down. Jake pointed at his own prosthetic leg and rolled up his pant leg to show her. Zara's eyes widened in surprise. Jake then pointed at her damaged leg and made fixing motions with his hands. He went to his workbench and brought back some tools, showing them to her. Zara seemed to understand. She nodded and carefully removed the damaged artificial leg. Jake was amazed by the technology. It was far more advanced than anything humans had created, with tiny circuits and power cells that he could barely understand. But the basic principles were the same as his own prosthetic. For the next several hours, Jake worked on repairing Zara's leg while she watched. She couldn't speak his language, but she pointed to different parts and made sounds that seemed to be instructions. Jake found that some of his spare parts could replace the damaged components, even though they were human-made. As they worked together, Jake began to understand more about his unexpected visitor. She was clearly intelligent and knew a lot about technology. She was also frustrated by her injury in a way that Jake recognized. She kept looking at her damaged leg with anger and shame, emotions Jake knew well. When other crew members walked past his room, Jake quickly covered Zara with a blanket and motioned for her to be quiet. She seemed to understand that she needed to hide, and she stayed silent until they passed. Jake realized he was taking a big risk by helping her instead of reporting her presence. But something about her situation reminded him too much of his own struggles. After many hours of careful work, Jake managed to get Zara's artificial leg working again. It wasn't perfect, and it made small humming sounds when she walked, but it supported her weight. When she stood up and took her first steps, she smiled at Jake with such genuine gratitude that he felt warm inside. Zara then did something unexpected. She went to a small device that had fallen from her clothes when she arrived. It looked like a crystal wrapped in metal wires. She touched it several times, and suddenly it began to glow. When she spoke, Jake heard her words translated into English. "Thank you. she said, and her translated voice still had a musical quality. You have helped me when you could have caused me great trouble. I am Princess Zara of the Celestial Empire, but I think I am very far from home now. Jake's eyes widened. Princess? Your royalty? Zara's expression became sad. I am princess of a people who think I am broken and worthless because of this, she said, touching her artificial leg. I was sent away on a mission that was really just a way to get rid of me. The dimensional drive on my ship malfunctioned, and I ended up here in your room. I understand, Jake said quietly. My people used to think the same way about people like us. But we learned that being different doesn't make someone worthless. Zara looked at him with curiosity. Your people accept those who are damaged? We're not damaged, Jake said firmly. We're different. And sometimes being different makes us stronger, not weaker. We find new ways to solve problems that others can't see. For the first time since she had arrived, Zara smiled a real smile. She looked around Jake's room, seeing all his inventions and modifications that made life easier for someone with a prosthetic leg. She saw the way he had turned what others might see as a limitation into an opportunity for innovation. I would like to learn more about your people, she said. And I would like to understand how you can help me fix my dimensional drive so I can return home. Though I must admit, I am not eager to go back to a place where I am not wanted. Jake looked at this alien princess who had literally fallen into his life, and he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Maybe they could help each other.